Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something fundamental, really. A core question about crime. Is it about the individual? Some kind of personal failing.
Or is it more about the world around them, the environment, the social structure, maybe even the system itself?
Exactly. And our sources today really push us toward that second idea.
They do. We're exploring social structure theories. And honestly, this was a huge shift in criminology, a real game changer.
How so?
Well, it forced everyone to stop just looking at the person who committed the crime and start looking critically at the society that shaped them.
Right. And that shift wasn't random. There were pioneers, people who said, let's look at the data, not just, moral judgment.
Absolutely. You've got to start with Quetelet. Way back in the 19th century, he was one of the first to actually use statistics, data, to find patterns in crime.
Seeing trends instead of just isolated acts.
Precisely. And then philosophically, the giant is Emil Durkheim, a founder of sociology.
And he had this really, provocative idea about crime.
He really did. He called crime, wait for it, normal and necessary.
Okay, hold on. Necessary. How can crime be necessary? That seems completely backwards.
It sounds, I know. But Durkheim's point was that society needs to test its boundaries sometimes. If we never had crime, how would we know where our shared moral lines actually are? Crime, in a way, clarifies our values. It actually strengthens the bonds among people who follow the rules.
So it's functional in a weird way.
That was his argument, an inevitable part of how society works.
Okay. And this kind of thinking really took hold with the Chicago school, right? Early 20th century.
Yes, exactly. They cemented this sociological approach. They looked at cities like Chicago growing incredibly fast and saw these powerful social forces at play.
And they connected crime to the environment.
They did. They concluded that certain urban areas became sort of natural areas for crime, not because of the people themselves necessarily, but because of the social conditions, the ecology of the neighborhood.
Got it. So for you listening, this isn't just abstract theory. It shapes real-world policies on poverty, on policing, on education.
Absolutely. And we're going to break down the three main branches today: social disorganization theory,
Strain theory,
and cultural deviance theory.
Okay, let's start with a basic backdrop for all these theories. The fact that society isn't equal, it's stratified.
Right. Our sources are clear on this. We live in a society with distinct layers: upper, middle, lower class. And where you start often dictates your opportunities.
And for people in that lowest stratum, the underclass, the experience is tough.
It really is. We're talking about neighborhoods often defined by poor housing, maybe unstable work or underemployment, difficult access to healthcare, stressed family lives.
Yeah.
It creates this sense of, despair.
And here's the core conflict, the paradox that really fuels these theories.
Go on.
These individuals are living in a society, especially the U.S. context, that screams success, money, status, above all else.
Right, the American dream narrative.
But the very structure of society often blocks them from achieving that success through the normal, legitimate ways. They hit wall after wall.
And when that happens, what's the result? Often it's a kind of pulling away, a disengagement.
Apathy.
Cynicism.
Yeah, and helplessness, too. And crucially, a deep mistrust of institutions. The police, schools, the government. Why trust a system that feels like it's set up for you to fail?
The data really backs this up,
Yeah.
especially for kids. Poverty hits harder when you're young.
It seemed to have a more lasting impact, yes. And our sources point out that for minority groups, these problems are often worse because there hasn't been a real sustained effort to integrate communities or provide stability.
There's a stark statistic mentioned.
Yes, that Latino and African American children are more than twice as likely to be classified as poor compared to Asian and white children.
Wow.
So this inequality, this stratification, it's the foundation. It dictates who gets a fair shot and who doesn't. Okay, so that sets the stage. Let's dive into the first branch, social disorganization theory. This one comes strongly from those Chicago school guys, Shaw and McKay.
Right. And their focus is squarely on the urban environment itself. They're saying, look at the neighborhood conditions. That's what affects crime rates. It's about the ecology of the place.
And they focused on specific kinds of neighborhoods.
They did. They found crime wasn't just high in poor areas, but specifically in what they called transitional neighborhoods.
Transitional, meaning what exactly?
Think of areas near the city center, maybe a bit run down, lots of renters, people moving in and out frequently, property changing hands, maybe speculation happening. Nobody's putting down deep roots.
Okay, so if you're just passing through, you're not going to invest your time or energy in the community. Why bother fixing things up or joining local groups?
Exactly that. Shaw and McKay argued that because residents are transient, maybe disconnected, the community can't organize itself effectively. It can't defend itself against crime taking root.
So when the local pillars, the churches, community groups, stable businesses, when those are weak or missing,
The social fabric phrase, it dissolves. And into that vacuum, that's where you see illegal groups, youth gangs forming. It's almost a natural response to the lack of positive organization.
and they visualize this, right? The concentric zones.
Yes, the famous model using Chicago. Picture circles spreading out from the central business district.
Like ripples in a pond.
Sort of. And they found crime rates were highest in that zone just outside the transition zone, and then consistently dropped as you moved further out towards this stable residential suburbs.
So the location itself was predicting crime, almost regardless of which ethnic group lived there at any given time.
That was their key finding. Later, the social ecology school built on this. They still focused on the neighborhood, but emphasized things like community deterioration, economic decline, chronic unemployment.
Creating fear.
Exactly. Community fear, maybe racial tensions. These become drivers of crime. They put maybe a little less emphasis on different values and more on people just reacting to a really tough environment.
But this line of thinking isn't all negative. It also gives us a really important positive concept: collective efficacy.
Yes, this is crucial. Collective efficacy is basically the opposite of social disorganization. It's a cohesive community.
What does that look like?
It's a neighborhood where people trust each other, where they share a sense of responsibility for what happens there. They feel empowered to, keep an eye on things. It's the community policing itself, informally.
And this works on different levels, right? Our sources mention 3.
That's right. First, there's informal social console, just neighbors looking out for each other, watching kids, maybe stepping in if they see minor trouble.
Like telling off kids who are causing problems.
Sure. Then there's institutional social control. This means the local institutions, schools, churches, community centers are strong, stable, and respected.
Okay. And the third?
Public social control. This is about the community having a good working relationship with outside agencies like the police or city services. They feel they can call for help and get a positive response.
And the payoff?
It's significant. Where collective efficacy is high, kids are much less likely to get into trouble, less likely to hang out with deviant peers. The community itself acts like a protective buffer.
So a strong community structure protects itself. But what if the problem isn't just the neighborhood, but the feeling that the whole system is rigged against you? That brings us to strain theories.
Exactly, branch 2. And the core idea here is this tension. Most people, regardless of class, actually want similar things. The good life, success, stability.
The American dream again?
Right. But the ability to achieve those goals, that's heavily stratified by socioeconomic class. This gap, this sharp division between the haves and have-nots, creates feelings of envy, mistrust, and that can fuel aggression and crime.
And this goes back to Durkheim again, his idea of anomie.
It does. We mentioned anomie as a breakdown of rules. Durkheim thought this was more likely during times of big societal shifts.
Like moving from, mechanical to organic solidarity.
Right. Mechanical solidarity is like a traditional pre-industrial society. Everyone does similar work, shares the same beliefs. Things are stable, unquestioned.
Simple rules.
Pretty much. Organic solidarity is modern, complex society. We're all connected, but through interdependence, division of labor. Think about how complex our economy is.
Okay.
If society changes too fast, if the economy tanks, the old rules don't seem to apply anymore. People get disoriented, lose their moral footing. That's anomie normlessness.
And Robert Merton adapted this specifically for America.
He did. Merton said anomie arises from a specific conflict, the gap between the culturally defined goals like wealth and status,
That everyone is told to want.
and the socially approved means of getting them like education, hard work, a good job.
The strain happens when you buy into the goals but don't have access to the legitimate means.
Precisely. And that strain leads people to adapt in different ways. Merton laid out 5 famous adaptations. Conformity is the most common. Accept the goals, accept the means, play by the rules.
The law-abiding citizen.
Right. But the one criminologists focus on is innovation.
Why is that?
Because innovators accept the cultural goal success, money, but they reject the legitimate means because they're blocked. So they innovate. They find other means.
Criminal means. Theft, drug dealing, fraud.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have ritualism. They give up on the big goals, but they rigidly stick to the rules, the means. Think of someone stuck in a dead-end job, just going through the motions.
Okay.
Retreatism is rejecting both the goals and the means. These individuals might drop out, perhaps turn to drugs or alcohol, total withdrawal.
And the last one.
Rebellion. They reject the current goals and means, and they want to replace them with something new. They want to change the system itself. Think revolutionaries or radical activists.
So if the whole culture pushes economic success so hard, what does that do to our institutions, the ones meant to guide us?
That's where institutional enemy theory, or IAT, comes in. It argues that the relentless pressure for economic success in American culture actually weakens the other institutions.
Like family, schools.
Yes. Family, education, even religion, their role in teaching values, providing non-economic support, gets overshadowed. Everything becomes geared towards economic achievement. Schools focus more on job training than, say, ethics. This weakens their ability to exert informal social control.
And connecting this back to the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
there's the idea of relative deprivation.
Right. This suggests it's not just about being poor in absolute terms. It's about being poor compared to others around you, seeing their success when you feel blocked.
Seeing the inequality up close.
Exactly. That visible gap can breed resentment, envy, fear among those, especially young men who feel like they're losing out. That fuels crime in the neighborhood.
And finally, within strain, there's general strain theory, or GST. This one feels a bit different.
It is. GST shifts the focus more to the individual's experience of strain. It asks, why do people who feel stressed, frustrated, or treated unfairly become more likely to commit crime?
And the answer is?
It argues that crime is often a response to negative affective states. Basically, bad feelings, anger, frustration, depression, fear that arise from negative experiences or relationships, getting bullied, losing a job, facing discrimination. These strains create negative emotions, and crime can be a way to cope or retaliate.
That sounds pretty comprehensive at the individual level.
It is quite robust.
Yeah.
Though our sources do note it sometimes struggles to fully explain gender differences in crime, why men and women might react differently to similar strains.
Okay, so that covers disorganization and strain. Let's move to our final branch, cultural deviance theory. How does this fit in?
Cultural deviance theory, in a way, pulls together elements from the other two. It combines ideas about social disorganization and strain to explain how distinct subcultures can develop in deprived neighborhoods.
Subcultures with their own rules.
Exactly. These groups develop their own conduct norms, their own rules for how to behave day to day within that specific environment.
And crime happens.
When those subcultural rules, the conduct norms, clash with the rules of the dominant culture, which are written into criminal law. It's culture conflict. What's expected or even admired in the subculture might be illegal outside of it.
What kinds of values define these subcultures?
Well, theorists identified what they called focal concerns, values that dominate lower-class culture as adaptations to their reality. Things like trouble, getting into it, avoiding it, toughness, physical strength, street smartness, being able to outwit or con others, excitement, seeking thrills to break up monotony, fate, feeling like life is out of your control, and autonomy, resenting authority.
These aren't necessarily bad values in context, are they? They sound like survival skills.
That's a key insight. Toughness earns respect when formal systems don't protect you. Street smartness helps you navigate a precarious economy. They're functional within that specific world.
And this can lead to status frustration.
Yes. The idea here is that for young people especially, delinquent behavior becomes a way to gain status and respect within their peer group because the conventional paths to status, good grades, respectable jobs, seem completely out of reach or irrelevant. It's a form of protest against middle-class standards they feel judged by but can't meet.
And this connects to gangs.
It does through the theory of differential opportunity. This theory says, okay, everyone might want success, but lower-class youth have limited legitimate and illegitimate opportunities. The type of crime available depends on the neighborhood structure.
So different kinds of gangs emerge.
Right. You get criminal gangs in more stable but still poor neighborhoods where there are existing criminal networks. They focus on profit theft, drug dealing, very businesslike.
Right.
Then in highly disorganized, unstable areas, those transition zones we talked about, you get conflict gangs. Their focus is violence, reputation, turf wars. Status comes from being tough and feared.
And the third type.
Retreatist gangs. These are individuals who couldn't make it either legitimately or illegitimately in the criminal or conflict worlds. They're kind of double failures, and they often withdraw into heavy drug use and isolation.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered these three big perspectives. Disorganization, strain, cultural deviance. Stepping back, how do we evaluate them overall?
Well, their impact is huge. There's no denying that. They fundamentally shifted how we think about crime, moving beyond just the individual. And generally, the core ideas, the links between poverty, neighborhood conditions, inequality, and crime, are pretty well supported by research.
But there are criticisms, nuances.
Definitely. A major one is that, most people living in poor, disorganized neighborhoods are not criminals. They're law-abiding citizens coping with difficult circumstances. So these theories explain tendencies, not inevitabilities.
And the idea of a single lower-class culture might be too simplistic.
Exactly. Lower-income communities are diverse, not monolithic. So painting everyone with the same brush based on these theories can be misleading.
Still, despite those academic debates, the influence on actual policy has been massive.
Immense. This thinking moved the conversation towards prevention and addressing root causes. It directly influenced policies like providing financial aid, welfare programs.
Trying to reduce that economic strain.
Right. And also efforts to improve the physical and social structure of high-crime neighborhoods, things like the communities that care model, investing in community centers, improving housing.
And community policing, too. Trying to build trust.
Absolutely. Modern community policing strategies focused on partnership and problem solving rather than just reacting to incidents draw heavily on these ideas about building trust and collective efficacy.
So this deep dive really underscores that shift from seeing crime as purely individual choice or pathology to understanding the powerful role of the environment, the social structure, the blocked opportunities.
Definitely. Social disorganization, strain, cultural deviance, they give us essential frameworks for understanding why crime happens where and when it does.
We saw how economic pressure, that strain, can push people towards adaptation, sometimes criminal adaptation.
But we also talked about that really powerful counterforce. Collective efficacy, that community strength, that mutual trust and shared responsibility.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener. Understanding the theories is one thing, but think about your own community, your own neighborhood.
What existing institution is there? Maybe it's a local school, a struggling community center, maybe even just a local business that cares that you could potentially support or empower.
How could you personally contribute just a little bit towards building that collective efficacy, strengthening that trust? Because that resilience doesn't just prevent crime, it makes the whole community stronger.
Something to think about. How can we build that trust street by street?